This is part 2 of the Unity Stealth VR project. Since the last video, I've changed this project so that we can play it in first person rather than from third person, as we saw in the last video. But first, I think last time I forgot to show this page. This is the Unity documentation that shows how to set up the input for OpenVR controllers. So it shows the different controllers, both the Vive ones, the Oculus Touch controllers, and the Knuckles controllers, and which Unity button IDs in the joystick options that you can use for setting up the controls. So in case you want to change the controls of the last video, this is where to find it. And you can just search for Unity OpenVR controllers input, and it will find this page, or go to this link. But to show what we are going to do in this video, this is the new project, and I have disabled the music this time because it was too loud, and it was probably a bit annoying in the last video. First I'll show how this project works, and this time I'll make this maximize. Wait, maximize on play. Here we go. So this is the new project. You can see my controllers in the game, and I can go around using these the sticks, where I can turn around with smooth turning, and I can move forward and strafe and such with the left hand stick. On the Vive ones, this should be able to this should work the same. And I've made buttons that you can click, and it will open the lasers. And you can and you can go around and look at the environment. And there's cameras. Whoops. And I activated the alarm, and I've disabled the music because it was annoying. But let's see if I can survive this. Oh, I died. But yeah, I also made it possible to enter the level and into the elevator. Now I'll show how I set this up. So first I'll open where we entered the project last time. Here we have the new project, or the project from before. The game is still in its own game object, with the player and the camera stuff outside. Not sure why I did this. But first we'll disable this camera movement. We'll actually just remove it. And then we need to activate these, because this is the controls you are meant to use. And it's set to sliding on the left controller, and right now the right controller is also set to sliding, but we'll want it to rotate and slide instead, so I'll activate this and disable this one. But we don't really need to be able to move with this one, so I'll disable the sliding, so it's only able to turn, and turning is a bit slow, so I'll just set it to 12 instead, and I'll set this to 3 because the standard settings is very slow. Oh, and remember to deactivate this one, because the active one is the one that decides which controls you're going to use. Another important option here is going here and make it, these are the different ways you can decide which direction to move. So is it the rotation of the headset that decides where to move, or the controller? And I like it to be the left controller. And we need to disable this, otherwise when you move it will ignore the controls. Sorry, it will know the controls of the other controller when this one is active. So the same up here. Disable this, make it dependent on the left controller. And otherwise we have what we need here. Then we have the Ethan player, and he doesn't need this player movement script anymore. Whoops. Well, we need to open Visual Studio anyway. There. And player movement. So we'll just remove this script. And we don't need the rigid body anymore. But we do need the animator just to make it easier, because many of the other game objects in this game is depending on what animation you're using and trying to activate animations on the player. Let's see. So he still has a capsule collider. This makes it possible for the enemies to detect that this is the player. But we'll disable all of the graphics so that we can't see him anymore. Because what we really need right now is just the capsule collider, and since the game checks where the player is at many of the objects, it looks for the player character with or the object with the tag player. So I'll leave him out here, but we'll make a new script. So a new folder here, call it scripts, and here we will make a new C# script. We'll call it attach player on awake. So these other objects, they usually find the player in the startup. For example, this one takes the player, finds the player on his tag. So we'll just copy that and we'll make it on awake. And let's set up a game object called player. And let's just make it the game object. So now it remembers him. And then take the player and his transform parent equal this transform. this will make the object that I placed this script on make the player a child of this object when it's on awake. But then we also need to change the position. So we'll take the player.transform.position, well, the local position actually, and set it to a new vector 3, or actually vector 3.0 should actually define. This is just a regular vector 3 that has zeros in both x, y, and z. So this will make sure that the player is centered on our VR controller. Because the next step is then to take our SDK setup. Right now we are using SteamVR. We could just place the script on them all, but for now we just need it to be on the camera rig here, because this is where we want the game to detect the player. Another thing is to disable the music. So this one has some music, so we'll just mute this one and mute this one. This is mainly for the video so that it doesn't annoy you. Another annoying sound effect is the lasers. That's a bit high. So we'll select all the lasers and take the sound and make it 0.05 instead. Good. So now when the game begins, it should attach the Ethan character, which we have disabled the graphics for, to the SteamVR camera rig, and center his position right here to the camera rig. And also these VRTK scripts will make it possible for us to move around the level using these controllers. So now I'll show you a small test to see how this goes. Oh yes, we are still way off position. Well, for one thing, let's move these out again, because we don't need this camera for anything. And we have still disabled the camera rig, I think. We might as well make this the main camera. And instead of placing it up here, we can place it on Ethan and center it. And then we take it outside again. Let's see where it is. Here. So just move it up a bit. And let's try again. Better. It's still very jittery and I cannot turn around. So I probably forgot something. This is set to rotate. X-axis. Set this down to 9. But I think one of the main problems is actually the lighting in the level, because right now it's the setup is has not baked any new light maps. So we'll just use these settings and click generate lighting. Generating a new light map takes a long time, so I have skipped that skip the rendering part. But we probably also want to activate real-time global illumination to add a bit extra to the graphics. And let's see. For some reason, it's not turning around the right way. So the movement seems to be doing fine, but not so much the rotation. Disable for all the controls. Track touch, controller event. Oh yes, and let's we had set this to to main camera. Let's untag that just in case, because the one that needs to be the main camera is this one on the camera head. And VRTK body physics. Let's try enabling this, and we'll try again. And now we can turn so now we can walk around and get into the buttons. But also we can be detected. Yeah, and he shoots us, and the game restarts.
Restarting.
So far so good. I'm not sure if this should be needed, but maybe, I guess. And I will there. Let's put this up to 12 again to turn a bit faster. So now I can move around in the game, and the player being attached makes it so that I can activate the alarms with the lasers and the cameras, and the robots can see me. And I can also press these buttons using, I think it's the X or Y button on the touch controllers, but since this is a virtual reality game now, I would rather that it's a button that's possible to press. So if you go down to the example number overview number 25, open scene additive, and here we have some example objects. We need one of these surface ones, and the one we'll use is, oh wait, no, not surfaces. We need a pusher, and it's a physics pusher, and we need the one that says bottom right. It looks like this. Here's another thing: we take gizmos and disable these 3D gizmos because they're in the way. But yes, this button we'll need. So we will make a new folder, call it prefab. Oh wait, that was making a prefab. Make a new folder, prefabs. But first we'll set up this button. So we'll pull it up here. I'll just place it here. And then we can unload this scene and not save it. I'll just unload it from now in case I need something more. But what we need is to have this button put on one of these prop switches. So I'll grab the button again, button right, and we'll move it down to this one. And now the position, let's reset it to 0 so that we have it down here. And then I'll move it out so that it can be pressed. And we'll place it here. Now these buttons have a few settings. There's a physics pusher that enables it to be pushed, and there's the rigid body controller. These two things together makes it possible to push the button. And one of the settings here is let's see. No, there wasn't there. Strange. There. Ignore. And this one is now full of missing due to these objects being from the other scene. But the one thing we need here is the prop switch unit. So pull it here so that it will be ignored. And another thing we need to change is the box collider on these units. It needs to be a bit thinner because right now it'll just block the button. So move it back like this by first pressing this edit collider button, and then drag this small pixel it has in the center of this plane. And this should make the button be outside of this collision box, so that it can be pressed. But another thing we now need is for this button to activate the script on the switch. So if we click the switch unit, we will see that the switch unit has a laser deactivation switch. So if we double click this, and we'll see what this switch does is make it possible to use this laser deactivation. And we want to do this from somewhere else, so we need to make this script public, laser deactivation, and save this script again. And now we also need a new button. A new button script actually. So if we go to this button, we can see that there is a button reactor, and this script reacts whenever we press the button, but we'll need a modified version of this script. So I'll just copy all of this, and then I'll make a new script, and we'll call it VR button, and we'll add all the code from the other script. And we also need to set these using so that it'll actually know where to find all of these. And the logger as well. There. And then another thing we need is using Unity UI. Oh wait, Unity Engine, I guess it is. .ui, because now we will be able to make a public button, and this is a VR button, and we'll call it BTN for short. And the reason for this is to be able to make use of Unity's event system for the UI, because it's very dynamic. And what we then need to do is make sure that whenever we enable this VR button, it should take this and invoke the button. Oh wait, but it's actually on a click, and we need to invoke this so that Unity considers this button to have been clicked. Oh, and I need to delete this one because it wasn't in it. There we go. So now we have a button, but we don't have one in the game. And here, so I'll just make an empty first, call it button, and we need to make a UI button, and it will move it up here because this is where the UI system for this scene is. So we'll need to drag this down and drag it down some more until we get down to the button and place the button here. And the reason this is useful to have is, and let's disable the image because we don't really need the button. And it also has some text, and we will remove that as well, because what we do need is this. So we can take this, take the prop switch unit, drag it here, and it will have this done laser switch deactivation. And since we made it public, the laser deactivation, we can now select it here. So this is what the button does. It runs this this method when activated. And then we'll go back to the button and drag. Oh yeah, first we need the new script via button, and we'll place it here. And then we can take this button, the UI button, and drag it here. And this means when this button is pressed, it should activate the deactivate laser. And this is what we need, and this is also what we'll now call a VR button, because then we'll move this down into prefabs so that we have a new button. And because I already placed it in the right position of this prop switch unit, see, we can see it right there. So if I drag this VR button onto the switch unit number 3, and if I go to this switch unit, you can see that it's placed in the exact same position as the other. But we still need to change one thing on this button, because in its button it doesn't know what to activate, so it'll drag in the game object from the controller like before, and select done laser, and select the laser deactivation. and there are a few of these. So if I'll just search for switch unit, and I'll find a few more. And I'll drag a VR object to each one of them. So there, and again we need to have the switch unit, and it needs to activate the laser deactivation. And we still have another switch, and that should be switch number 4. Yes. And we'll add a VR button here as well, and again the switch unit and deactivate. There. So now we should have working buttons on all the stations. You might want to find some other thing to replace this object with, so that it would look more like a button. But right now we can go and push this button with our controller, because the controllers we've used from another example in the previous tutorial video. We already made sure that the interact grab and interact touch were added to these controllers, and this makes it possible for them to interact with these buttons. Another thing that is needed to be able to finish the game is to go to this elevator, and we'll see that it has a done lift trigger script. This one also needs to be changed a bit, because right now it expects the player to have an animation that can run an animator on the player that can run animations. So if we'll just comment this out and then comment out this animator, and then it tries to run this animator down here, and we'll deactivate that as well. Another thing it does is it takes the player transform and sets the elevator as its parent. But right now our rear camera is the parent. So if we'll do this, we can actually just take its parent instead and make its parent, which is our VR camera, to child of this elevator transform. And this will make our player move with the lift. And that should actually be all of it. Yes, so let's I'll just save and let's try it out. Okay, so I ran into some problems regarding the virtual reality and running it, and yeah, it just froze all of it, so I had to restart the computer. But we pretty much finished the project, so now I just need to see if this works. And we can turn around, and now we can try to press the button here, and let's see if we can just run. Yeah, here we have a button, and I'll push with the controller, and it clicks. And we'll run to the next one. And this one seems to miss a button. That's strange. Let's try to see why. We have the prefab ready. And if I search for switch, let's see, switch unit 3 maybe. And it does have a VR button. Right there. and this one does not have a view button. Oh wait, I see the problem. I placed it below for some reason. Well, let's just delete it. And add it again, because then it's automatically placed where it should be. But now I just need to do this again. Pull it over here. Set it to run laser deactivation. And we'll save and try again. For some reason it takes a while before it knows it can move. Might also be that and we have to be a bit sneaky. It seems the player body is actually a bit to the side. Let's run away. But we'll best make do for now. Oh yes, there was another thing we forgot. All the buttons need to have their colliders fixed. So they have this collider. And like before, we need to make it smaller. When it's the box collider. Make sure that it is behind the button. And the same with button 3. It has a collider, and we will reduce it. Oh yes, and another thing was it needs to ignore collision with the button itself. Same with number 2. Ignore collision with the switch unit. And button 3. Reduce the collider. And make sure that it doesn't collide with the button itself. So now it should work. Let's try again. This time I'll stand up to test because it's a bit easier. The little bit should be away. And we can click it. And that should be and the tutorial should be coming soon. There we have him. And let's move along. Click the next button. And now we'll have to wait for the guard. And there is another guard here. The sound is that we don't have the keycard for this elevator, so we need to go down here. here we have another button, which can also be pressed. Here we have a key card, and because we have put the player onto us, or at least his colliders and such, we can pick up the key, and because he also has the inventory script. And then we'll go this way again, because otherwise they'll detect us. And now we can open this door, I think. Yes. For some reason this inner door doesn't open. That's a bit strange. Yes, something is off by the regarding the last script. Let's have a look at it again. The elevator. Maybe, oh, it had an error. What was the error? 2 audio listeners. Not sure why that is. Let's collapse. No pointer reference. Oh, it's trying to get some movement from the camera. So let's remove that, and it was cam movement. Let's just make sure that it's not there as well, because then it'll show that this one is not in use as well. This is because I removed the camera that the game tried to use. And now it should work. Let's see how this goes. Yes. And the next laser. And we need to avoid the camera as well. And let's hide from the robot. Oh, nope.
Simulation restarting.
Ah, damn it. Oh, that's another thing. The simulation is not restarting, and that is probably because we need... No, it should restart. Strange. But there was an error. Ah, this one needs to be disabled as well. and all the animation stuff. So we'll go and click the button, and we will run out. Next button is clicked, and run by the camera. And the robot didn't see us. And then we better wait a bit back and then move forward. Mm-hmm. And now this last bit should work as well. We can go inside. And the elevator moves. And it also restarts as it should. So we can now finish the Stealth VR game. And in the next, this concludes this part of the tutorial. Now you know how to make stealth, Unity stealth tutorial or example scene into a VR game. In the next part, I will try to make it so that we actually see Ethan's body, the player character, so that we'll activate all of this again, and try to make it so that the VR arms actually controls the character's arms. I've been experimenting a bit with it, and it has given some troubles, but an alternative is maybe to use an Uma character instead of Ethan, and have it move with the VR controls. So I hope you found this useful. I'll add some links in the comments of the video or the description of the video. And if you have any questions, just ask in the comments, and I'll try to answer when I have time.